the work for me is more about making rather than the final product.
Yeah.
And some people see it and understand it on multiple levels deeper than I do sometimes. Like I go, oh, right, yeah, cool. Hadn't thought of that.
Love that feedback.
Yeah, thank you. Other people will go, oh, yeah, that's good. Walk on, or my kids could do better than that. You know what I mean? Like there's such an array of responses.
Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. My name is Maria Birch-Morunga and I am the host of Colourbox Studio Creative Conversations. Very happy to be here. As a manuhiri, as a visitor on these lands, it's really important for me to acknowledge that the Arts Centre Melbourne sits on a site that has been a gathering place for song, storytelling and community for First Nations people for millennia. On behalf of Colourbox Studio, I acknowledge the traditional custodians of the lands, the Wurundjeri Woiwurrung and the Boonwurrung people of the Kulin Nation. I pay my respects to the kaumātua, the elders, past and present. This land always was and always will be Aboriginal land. So hi, I'm Maria. A little bit about me. I'm from Aotearoa, I don't know if you figured that out, from New Zealand. And I'm grateful to call Melbourne home now. I am a visual artist, a podcast host, and a facilitator as well. So I'm an artist in my own right. And as an artist, I have been interviewed by the amazing Amie of Colourbox Studio, and now I have the pleasure of holding the mic and interviewing the wonderful artists today. Now, for those of you who don't know, Amie Batalibasi founded Colourbox Studio with the aim to amplify voices of diverse creatives, storytellers and filmmakers, and that's exactly what we're here to do tonight. So Jody Haines is going to be our first guest for tonight, and she is a contemporary artist here in Naarm. Her unique practice blends social practice, photo media, so that's photography, video, film, and public art, creating large-scale public activations that include projections, paste-ups, and street-wide photographic installations. Rooted in Indigenous feminism, new, known materialism, Jody's work explores themes of identity, representation, and the female gaze. Everybody give it up for Jody Haines. Oh, and you've got a cuppa too, gorgeous. Look at us. I want to cheers them.
Yeah.
You feeling comfy, Jody?
Yeah, I'll be totes fine.
Now, your bio is very, very impressive, and your artwork is very, very impressive as well. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
I sure can. I apologise in advance. I'm suddenly up here going, wow, there's people. And luckily you're clothed. This is great. It'll make me feel less nervous. So a little bit about me. Work with photography, film, projections, sound as well, installation, public art, and kind of, create things that are talking about my lived experience and also my experience of living in this colonial environment.
Those are pretty big things, photography, sound, projection. I'm wondering how you started this creative practice. Where did this come from?
A lot of playing with cameras and film cameras and stuff as a kid. I guess it's one of those cliched things, like everyone goes, oh, I've always done art, you know. It's like, I've been an artist since I was a child. But I kind of have always done art. I've always kind of been making stuff or imagining things or creating stories or, you know, making movies out of the embers that are flashing up on a fire, you know, kind of thinking about stories in that way as well. But kind of fell into photography many, many years ago as a kind of practice because it was my fallback career, which was once upon a time I was a musician, and when I realised that I wasn't going to be successful as a musician, I decided to get a fallback career. So, very intelligently, I picked another thing in the arts. So it's a great moneymaker, the arts. So that was kind of where my kind of formal experience into photography came, and studied photojournalism at QCA in Queensland, in Brisbane, and then left that.
Uni is hard.
Also, photojournalism wasn't really kind of something that sat with my ethics, which kind of does sound like it should be an ethical practice, but it sort of wasn't for me.
I'm going to ask quickly, what type of... Did you play an instrument when you were wanting to be a musician?
Yeah.
Yeah. You also have a really lovely voice. It makes me think that you would sing really well as well.
I was a singer, which was mostly what I did, but I also play guitar and ukulele and banjo, and have a collection of really lovely guitars that kind of just hang out with me all the time.
Oh my God. So it feels like the artistry and the creativity and the storytelling just comes naturally to you in so many different ways. It's kind of, I don't know, it was like I wasn't really constricted about doing any sort of art. Like my nan always sang and played piano. My dad sang. He also was a really amazing sketcher with charcoal. So he used to do lots of portraits of everyone with charcoal, which was kind of interesting. Found a whole bunch. He passed in 2017, and so when I was cleaning up his belongings, I found a whole bunch of ones that he'd made across the years, and ones from when we were kids, and ones of my uncles and my nan, and it was really quite sweet. Yeah. That's so special. I'm so glad that you've got those.
Yeah.
That's so gorgeous. So it sounds like creativity flowed in your childhood with everyone. Is that a big source of inspiration for you?
Yeah, I guess so. It's even though creativity flowed, it was like, I guess it was kind of an emotional outlet or an escape, if that makes sense, from the, the crappiness of northwest Tasmania. Yeah.
I did a similar thing. I was like, I must transport myself away from here. And maybe I did that through books a bit much. Or yapping, actually, which is probably how I found myself here.
Well, you've done it well.
Blushing. Now, I want to talk about your current practice, and what are the big inspirations in your current practice? What inspires your current work and those big installations?
Good question. There's a few different things. Like, it is kind of tied in with my PhD as well, so there's working on that. But I think, the big installations started with working, making portraits with humans who identify as women, and trying to kind of privileged women of colour firstly over anyone else in those portraits, and then placing those out into public spaces. And so that was all about who has the right to be seen and who's not seen, pushing back against the imagery that we are seeing and absorbing and being fed all the time, and kind of, taking up space and pushing back against those other faces. Yeah.
So making space for people who may not be seen so much in big places and big ways, Jody.
Yeah, but it's also having that conversation about, that kind of placing something somewhere, and kind of seeing what ripples from that as well. So thinking of those terms of, there's an academic in Canada who's works with the concept of social acupuncture, and he works primarily with theatre, but he places these ideas of theatre forms into locations where it creates some sort of difference or change. And so it's with, acupuncture is an energetic flow, so place something there to unblock or release or to change or to see whatever that change of direction is. So that was initially the thinking about these big faces in public spaces that went out, into the world. Yeah,
I can see that, and there, most recently, there have been your big face in a big public place. Was it on Sydney Road?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Tell
Yeah.
us about that work.
Yeah, that was the first big face though was down Scott Alley, which was kind of hilarious because I got shortlisted for this commission for Acme Goddess for like street thing. So the person I was going to be working with on the day got really sick, so they couldn't be part of the photos. So I was like, poor artist, like I totally want my shortlist fee, so I've got to put something in. So I then kind of worked through like the same sort of questions I'd worked with the other person I was going to be like photographing, and then kind of reimagined my take on a personal kind of experience of Jeddah, which was the first Australian film in colour. So Jeddah from Charles Chauvel, I think was 1956, 55, something around there. So first Australian film in colour, but also the first Australian film to have Aboriginal leads, so Indigenous leads. And that was Auntie Rosalie Kunis-Monks, who was played Jeddah. So I put forward a proposal to kind of reimagine what Jeddah is in 2024. So that was my first kind of stepping into like my big face in public space. And that was really fun because I got to have this kind of sense of play in my studio. So I was like, making up these sets and creating all these colours and throwing on some possum pelts and not wearing the way they should be done, like, moving through those steps of performativity to kind of unpack what my Jeddah moments were. And that kind of fell into really discovering that I was really, really keen to understand aspects of my, cultural heritage that had been completely taken away. So it was kind of, stepping through a performance of that, yeah.
And being brave and being the big face.
Yeah, it was hilarious because I had like nieces and nephews sending me videos of them picking my nose. Like, I was like, oh, you little bugger.
Can't you just be like beside
Yeah, totally.
Be nice to me.
I went in to document the work as well, and I'm standing there documenting, and there was a whole bunch of tourists came by and they're like, and they just start photographing me. I was like, oh, shame.
You're like, that is me actually.
Yeah, total shame. But yes, the Sydney Road work, that was part of Photo 2024. Yeah, for Coonahan Gallery and Black Dot Theatre. No, my God, Black Dot Gallery. Sorry, Kimber, if you ever hear this. Yeah, so that was the final body of work for my PhD. So that was kind of an interesting work because Kimber had come to me about making this new body of work for the show, and I didn't really know what I was making, and had gone home back to Lutruwetta and was sitting on Tomageen country and began making a series of lumen prints. So lumen prints, if people don't know what a lumen is, it's you get photographic paper and then place foliage on top of that paper and then let that get exposed by the sun. So it creates an impression of what that object is, and so you get that through the leaves and kind of around it, and then that becomes you fix that either with a chemical, or you can also fix that with salt water. So I chose to fix that with salt water and collected the salt water from in front of a 10,000-year-old fish trap on Sisters Beach, and then created these lumen prints. And throughout the whole time it was like, listening to the kookaburras and singing along with things and watching the ants go everywhere. So in my mind I was creating sort of a collaborative portrait with country, if that makes sense.
That 100% makes sense. I was thinking that the whole time you were talking. I was like, how beautiful that you were able to use, or not use is the wrong word, but be in, collaboration with.
Yeah.
It's really touched my heart, Jody. honestly.
Thank you. Yeah, so those lumen prints then became, I put those onto fabrics and then randomly decided to sew my own clothes, like, because you do that.
I've done that, don't worry about it. I've got a sewing machine in my closet.
I know, but it's like, I could have outsourced it. I didn't have to make it so hard for myself, but, yes, and then sewed those pieces of clothing. But then thinking of those pieces of clothing with those prints as kind of a connection back home to keeping me kind of in relationship with country, but while I was here on Kulin Country. But then that led to thinking about the entanglement of coming from Tasmania, living on Kulin Country, having this kind of, big colonial structure city behind us, and then discovering that John Batman was also really entangled with where I'm currently living, so which is Footscray. But his original journey in this area came down the Maribyrnong, and his first point of landing on Kulin Country was at Grimes Reserve near Footscray Community Arts. And my studio is only like 200 metres away from that river. I walk that river all the time. I've done this kind of, journey down that river a lot. I've made that journey across the strait from Tasmania to here. I've got family members on another side of my family that were, worked for that human. So I was thinking about this kind of entanglement of where these histories lie, and then, how we kind of move through these colonial blockages to still be present and still not claim space, but to be with space, and to be with country. So that was kind of that. It was called Flowing with the Future, Surviving Batman.
Surviving, yep.
Yeah. Yeah.
I feel like to glance at the big face in the public space, you might not pick up on all of those nuances. How do you think about those big installations and all of the care and intention put behind them? Do you care about the audience? It's a bit of a on-the-nose question, isn't it? What do you think about the end viewers? Those tourists coming up and saying, "Oh, it's you," and you're being like,
look, I'd probably do that as well, It's like, we're all human. I don't not care about the audience. I do care about the audience's kind of experience of flowing through works and having space and opportunity to view and explore the works. I'm not so concerned that everyone understands every detail of it, because I guess the work for me is more about making rather than the final product.
Yeah.
So, it's definitely the process of making that creates the work. And some people see it and understand it on multiple levels and deeper than I do sometimes. Like, I go, oh, right, yeah, cool. Hadn't thought of that.
Love that feedback.
Yeah, thank you. But it's also other people will go, oh, yeah, that's good. Walk on, or my kids could do better than that. You know what I mean? Like, everyone, there's such an array of kind of responses, and you can't please all the people all the time, so why bother?
Yeah.
Like, it's
Exactly.
just make sure you're happy with what you're making, and that somebody might like it.
I like it. I like it a lot. Now, I want to talk about a few things. I've got a few things that are floating around in my mind. The first thing I want to talk about is, what is your favourite part of the process of making for you?
That's a good question. There's multiple favourite parts, and that's kind of changed with how my practice has kind of shifted and changed, which was, as a lot of artists, our practice has changed over that COVID space and time. Previous to all of that, I was, working collaboratively with people, as I said, like, you know, with other humans, which I love. I love that, sharing stories, and I love hearing about people's experiences, and I love just, you know, I love a yarn. I love like learning about life through the eyes of somebody else as well. Like there's so many great stories and so much experience that, you know, is there that we can, like, as an individual, we don't ever understand what somebody else is experiencing or knows unless we engage and listen to them and share. So I think that's probably the thing that I love the most. And then, yeah, a good cup of tea.
Yes, a good cup of tea.
Yeah.
I'm wondering about the COVID pivot. So your work was quite collaborative, as you've just mentioned, and then recently it's less been a collaboration with other people and more a collaboration with yourself and a collaboration with country. Was it COVID that spurred that on?
Yeah, it really was. But thankfully, because it really pushed me to have to kind of interrogate my practice a little deeper, it was COVID that changed it. You know, we got to a point in time where we couldn't share air, we couldn't hug, we couldn't experience life, we couldn't do all those things that was part of having a social practice, you know. So it kind of just shifted it, and probably go back to what I was doing maybe one day, who knows.
But
Get
it
this
sounds
PhD
like
done first.
Oh, yeah. The PhD, tell us about the PhD. I feel like I'm perhaps a bit naive about what PhDs are, because when you said that the work on Sydney Road was part of your PhD, I was like, I thought PhD was just writing. I'm wrong, right? Tell us about your PhD.
Yeah, it's definitely sent me grayer. But, you know, I was always grey. Yeah, PhD, it's practice-led. So it's like being led through my practice. It's exploring my questions through photography and film and public art and making. But now I've kind of added in things like poetics and grandma stories and, you know, things like that.
You can't help it. You're too creative. Now, one of the things I noticed while I was researching you, and I feel like you don't keep this very hidden, but tea is very central to your creative practice. Can you talk about why?
Tea's one of those things that, like, when you have a warm cup of tea in your hands, it breaks down barriers. You get that kind of sense of sharing and connecting with people. It's the smell of it becomes an embodied process. You're smelling it, you're thinking about it, you're holding it. It's warming you on the inside. It breaks down the stories. And it also, I didn't realise initially until I started writing about it. It was something that I realised was a really big connector to my grandma. So when it went down, like, there was a whole bunch of people around my nan's table, like, you know, there'd be aunts and cousins, and everyone would be having like that conversation around a cup of tea. Like, so Nan would be boiling the kettle, making the pot of tea. The whole world solutions to every world problem happened over that cup of tea. But it was also these moments where I remember watching her make these cups of tea of a morning. Like, she'd kind of stand there and be staring out the window waiting for that tea to seep and, like, you know, do a pot turns each way. But it was kind of, I always thought about that as these moments of for her that were kind of her moments to breathe and to ground herself, for whatever challenges were coming for the day. Yeah, I realised I started adding in having a cup of tea and a yarn in my social practice when I'm working with other humans, and I never realised why until I really unpacked it, and it was all about just missing Nan. Yeah.
I feel like when you think about a cup of tea, it seems like such an everyday thing. But the way that you just described your Nan, and essentially it sounds like a ritual or like a ceremony for her.
Is.
And it's like, why can't something that is so everyday be actually really special?
Yeah. And it is. It was a ceremony, and I guess, you know, pulling that idea of the ceremony as well into Sean Wilson, who's another Canadian writer. Like I'm not totally attracted to Canada. But anyway, it sounds like it. I'm just referencing that. Well, he created his whole PhD on research as ceremony. So it was kind of these moments of breaking down. The ceremony aspect breaks down that space between. It gives kind of a level playing ground. It creates a moment where we can connect. And, yeah, there's no kind of hierarchy as well in that sense.
I feel like when I think about, perhaps this is projecting my university experience, but when I think about researching in the university context, it did feel very hierarchical. But where I had the most joy while completing my business degree was when I did Indigenous units, because I'm Māori, and those units, the research did feel like ceremony. It didn't feel like I was in another wing of colonisation. It felt really special and like sacred, which I feel like is reflected in your work, the kind of ceremony of research that you've done.
Yeah, that's interesting. Thank you.
I just think you're really great, Jody.
Oh, shush.
Now, I have a question about PhD again. As an Indigenous artist, how do you feel showing up with your full self in those spaces? Are you able to show up as your full self in those spaces?
When I first started, I don't think I could. It's still a really, it's a problematic space. But now I kind of just don't give a shit. It's like, oh, whatever, dangle your carrots, do your thing. It's like it doesn't really affect me anymore. I'm there to finish my research, to make my work, to, the students that I work with them in a kind of way that feels good and collaborative. Yeah, it's kind of, I don't know.
That makes me really happy that you're like, I'm here to do what I'm here to do, and I'm going to do it my way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I'm also not beholden because I'm not really employed. So, but that's also another, problematic area of academia is that you very rarely see humans of colour employed in those spaces. And then when you do, the part-time or the sessional, they don't have these kind of spaces of ongoing kind of, what would you call that? What is ongoing employment? I can't remember the last time I had it. It's, that kind of, safety net or whatever. It's, it doesn't exist.
And so you're operating in that space as part of your PhD as opposed to getting that cash.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it sounds special. It sounds like you're making it special and making the most of it regardless.
Oh, it drives you nuts. So.
Yeah, that's why I stopped at a bachelor's degree. I couldn't do that to myself. Go you.
Thanks.
And especially that we get to see the output of it on places like Sydney Road, I love that. I love that so much.
It was actually really quite hilarious. My sister was like, how's the show going on Sydney Road? I'm like, yeah, I think it's going okay. I don't think anyone's put a penis on my face yet. It's kind of, she's like, what?
And you're like, and if they did, it would be a collaboration.
Exactly.
Now, I want to talk about the kind of nature of some of your works, not all of your works, but some of your works are really like ephemeral in that they are only installed for a small amount of time or, a block of time, and then they kind of just exist. They still exist afterwards, but more so in like echoes. And I'm wondering how you approach those pieces. Would you approach those pieces differently to something that's going to stay somewhere for a long time?
Yeah, because the majority of my stuff is so like short-term, ephemeral kind of works, I really struggle with the longer-term works, like the stuff that I make that kind of pops up and pops down. I don't really struggle with that because it's kind of it's here and then it's gone. But, as you say, you have those echoes or those traces of the moments, like which kind of live in the documentation or, my fabricated story or whatever. I think I actually struggle more with the permanent works because that becomes society changes so fast, and like you don't know what might be relevant today is certainly not going to be relevant in 3 years' time. And if you've got something that's installed for the next 20, I feel that it's a really big responsibility to try and kind of make something that can feel authentic and actually has sort of a connection to country and to people to experience here. So, yeah, the ephemeral stuff, I love that. Like
The little snapshot, the little moment in time. Yeah.
If you didn't see it, it didn't happen.
Yeah. Well, we know it did because you've got a fabulous website that documents them beautifully.
Thanks.
Now, I'm wondering, when do you feel most creative? Like, is there something in particular that makes you feel most creative? Last time actually both the guests said in the shower.
Yeah.
Are you going to say in the shower too?
I think that kind of definitely the shower though, like because the shower, like it's that falling of water on your head and you kind of get that sort of the repetition. It becomes this sort of meditative moments. Like you go, oh, I hadn't thought of that before. Okay, yep, I'll put that in, or just things that put you into a flow state. I think are the things where I feel most creative, and that can be like whether it's making scones. I've started making scones. I'm not really sure why, but it's like my newfound thing of like, oh, I've just got to make some scones.
Oh, I love that so much. Do you put a can of lemonade in them?
Soda water, actually.
Oh, soda water.
Yeah, I know. Because I don't
secrets.
drink lemonade,
That's
so
sugary.
it's just like, yeah.
But making scones gets you into the flow state.
Yeah, because it's kind of that movement of not having to think. You're just kind of kneading, you're moving, like you're mixing, you're kind of chopping things up. And as I'm doing those things that are so removed from every day, it kind of helps to just creatively unblock. Yeah. That and just singing and playing guitar.
I love that so much. Your singing and playing guitar, is that something that you just do for you now? Or are you out somewhere doing that in the world that we can see it?
Mostly just for me.
I feel like it's great to keep some things to yourself.
Every now and again I might pop up at the local bar on a Wednesday night.
Oh, I live in Footscray.
But that's far and few between, yeah.
Bless. How do you feel about the stories that you keep for yourself and the stories that you put into the world? Is there a line there or?
Yeah, I think everyone has a line. Yeah, I mean, you've got to keep some things to yourself. Some stories are just kind of, personal and sacred and they're just for you and then other ones are sometimes there is personal stories that I do put out into the world. Well, I guess most of my work becomes personal, but there's been some deeply personal works that I've put out, like my first ever solo show that the lovely Bernadette Fitzgerald produced for Footscray. That was a deeply personal story of abuse and things like that. So that was, kind of moving through that. Yeah.
And sometimes there's a way to put out those stories that you might want to keep for yourself, but I think depersonify maybe or make them more universal. There's a way to put out those private stories without actually giving the whole story as well.
Absolutely. And it's like that's the beauty of art. It's like you can make things that so many people, like if you make things from an authentic space, everyone will have their own reading of it or their own understanding of it and kind of emotionally connect to it. I mean, you don't have to tell the whole story.
Yeah. Now, we're going to open it up for audience questions. How are you feeling about audience questions, Jody?
I love it.
I wasn't expecting to be first, sorry.
You're doing amazing. You're so brave.
That's okay. I wasn't expecting to be here.
I wrote it down so I wouldn't forget. What inspired you to undergo a PhD? Like, why did you think about doing a PhD and not just stop?
That That's a good question, because if I could jump into my TARDIS and go back in time, I would, definitely tell myself not to bother, not to do it. I question myself on it a lot about why I decided to do it. I'm still not sure why I did, to be honest. I'm probably, at the other end of it, I'll probably be grateful that I did do it, because it has taught me a lot and it's kicked my butt so many times. It seemed like a good challenge. Yeah. Are you thinking of doing a PhD? Because I was going to say, do it. Yeah. No, I'm kidding.
It sounds like audaciousness. Jody, you're just audacious.
I don't know. I might have been going through a midlife crisis. I'm not quite sure.
I'll keep that in mind.
I think we can all relate to that midlife crisis.
Cool.
Thank you so much, Jody, for speaking. It's terrific stuff to hear.
Thank you.
I wanted to ask you about this concept of social acupuncture. I think that's brilliant. I've never heard of it. And it got me thinking about this battle that we're in the public space against a lot of outdoor advertising. And I wanted to hear your thoughts on that. So take that question as openly as you can.
The outdoor advertising. I guess that's kind of where that sort of big faces in public spaces came from, was kind of pushing back against the advertising, pushing back against like who's seen and who's not seen. So Daniel O'Donnelly was the person who came up with that idea. So it's not mine. Advertising is so everywhere, like we just can't get past it. And then it goes through all these phases of, yes, now we're seeing more people in kind of the face of this advertising, but then we're seeing more people of colour, we're seeing more people of differently abled bodies, we're seeing a wider variety of humans, but I'm still quite sceptical as to why that is the happening, whether it's just ad execs going, we need to do this, or, it's all generated through that economics, the neo-capital project, which is still ongoing. They're still very directed about how people of colour are seen in that advertising. So they're still not given any kind of substance, if that makes sense. They're not seen as kind of a full human in that regard. Yeah.
And so your work disrupts that?
Momentarily, yeah. Yeah. I hope so. And then it's here and it's gone, and then maybe other people can look at that work differently, that advertising differently, or question something a little bit more. Yeah.
I think we have time for one more question. Do we have one more question?
Hi.
Oh, it's Amie. Hello.
It's me in the back in the dark. I know that there are some Deakin University students here and emerging artists as well. And I just wonder, how do you do this for so long and keep it sustainable? How do you maintain an arts practice? That's a big question. And also, not just for the students, I still want to know, how do we do this and keep going? It can be really tough.
I don't know anymore. It's a lot of hard work. It's a lot of hours of, unpaid work, of making, of, trying to scrape stuff together. But also, I don't know, I don't know how I'll continue to keep sustaining myself as an artist, because it does feel like the arts ecology is shifting and changing really quite rapidly. Not to be doom and gloom for the students who are moving forward. There just feels like there's a bit of a shift. Also, I'm tired. I'm kind of starting to feel quite tired from the kind of constant having to push and make. And one word of advice, though, for anyone coming through, if you're going to make something, show it at least 4 or 5 times. Don't keep making something new constantly. Get some longevity out of your work. Get some time to reflect and to see what it does in the world, and then reshape that as you keep moving, so you can keep doing iterations of something. Don't feel the pressure to be constantly making something new and to be doing that performance that, organisations and funding bodies, etc., all kind of keep pushing everyone to do. So sit with it, enjoy it, make some good stuff.
That is a gorgeous note to end on, Jody. Thank you so much for being vulnerable and generous and hilarious and having a cup of tea and a yarn with me.
Thank you.
I'm so, so grateful. You can go now. You're released.
Amazing. Thanks.
Thank you. Now we are at the end of our evening. I feel so lucky to have had these conversations tonight. I also want to thank Amie, Batalibasi and the Colourbox Studio team for letting me hold the mic. Everybody, thank yourselves for coming out to support artists in Melbourne. We love to see it. This episode was recorded at the Channel with the support of Art Centre Melbourne's Play program. And thank you guys so much for tonight.